If you're a Florida State fan, prime time means a whole lot. Of course, our show is, regardless of what time it's prime time. And of course, one of the greatest players in the history of the school. Now we've got the week 1 kickoff in prime time, ABC, bright lights, big stage against LSU. We've got the details. We'll talk about it right here on Florida State Seminoles Live, number 158. With Logan Robinson, Nole Game Day. There he is. Logan, I hope the back's not going to break tonight. We need you to do the heavy lifting.
We do disappoint no matter what, even though it is the middle of May and there's absolutely nothing, anything happening. Players are off doing their own workouts, traveling, enjoying some vacation before they have to come back for enrolling into classes, depending on who. And at least we have something kind of exciting for some time TV broadcast announcements to go off of and kind of get us started for the evening. But we are going to have some friends and listeners and viewers drop into the comments and maybe bring up some topics for us to help carry the show this evening.
Folks, once we get to media days and then into August camp, I can't guarantee we're going to be able to get to within a 60-minute time frame to answer all your comments and questions. So this is the time to get those comments and questions in, because we will get to all of them pretty much. I can almost guarantee that, okay? So leave the comments and questions. Before you get settled, hit the like button as well, and also bring some other folks on into our chat. We're going to talk some LSU as well. We got Carter coming in here from LSU Power Hour on YouTube to talk up the LSU side of this. So let's talk about the game that's lined up. No big shock here in terms of the announced game time, considering that it's not a Saturday game, it's a Sunday game. So we pretty much knew it was going to be a primetime deal at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. LSU, Florida State, 7:30 Eastern, ABC. Need to show up, show out, prime time, just like last year with Notre Dame, opening weekend, the only game on the slate. So it's not a Saturday, it's a Sunday. So that's the one game. So you want to watch college football or any football on that Sunday night, everybody's going to be watching FSU, Logan. So,
ooh, that's tough. That puts Norvell into a extra. If he wasn't already and some deep pressure here to bring in 7-8 wins this season, let's go ahead and start off the season and kick it off big against LSU, which, kind of think maybe both teams are in the fair spot. This might be a fair, even game. I think the line right now is -3.5 for LSU, favoring them. A lot of that can change, blah, blah, blah. But at least you would think, though, you wouldn't think about it 3 years ago, but with third-year coach Mike Norvell, don't try not to add in the COVID year and all that kind of stuff. But, Brian Kelly coming in his first year, you would think Florida State has an edge here, but it might not be the case so much. I mean, we'll talk a whole lot more about it. I know that we're hoping to have a guest on that has a lot more insight to what's going on in Baton Rouge and the state of the program there and what Kelly is trying to do. But, Florida State has faced Brian Kelly multiple times. And like we just said, and you said, Mark, starting the show off, Florida State faced him last year and, came very, very close with coming away with a win. And that was, second year, first true year for Mike Norvell. And for that to have that beginning of a season, it is nice to see, because Florida State has had a really rough patch and starting off their seasons, definitely in neutral site games. But going back to really, week 0, Florida State, I think this is a really good spot for them. I'm not a big fan, and I know the slate of games the next couple of years, Florida State is going to have a really big lineup of opponents that they're going to have to face. And, that is something that is scheduled 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 years in advance, yada, yada, yada. But for Florida State to start with week 0 against Duquesne, and then you understand what you're kind of working with there. And I think Florida State's going to have to do a lot of evaluating after that first game and understanding definitely the offensive line and understanding maybe who your best target is at wide receiver. I'm not too worried too much. I won't go too deep into detail about this, but I'm not too worried here of your starting quarterback with Jordan Travis going into a primetime matchup, because we've seen that he's been able to deliver in some of those moments. Was he fantastic and all of them? No, but he can be able to go in and deliver as a leader, as a manager down the field and score when needed. So there's a lot of different kind of storylines in this FSU versus LSU matchup that I like, and it's got to be, Brian Kelly's first year and what he can do with the talent there, because they still have a really nice amount of talent in Baton Rouge. I don't think there's going to be a problem there, but Florida State also had the same deal. They had a great talent all around, left and right, offense, defense, and every which area, but couldn't deliver. And some of that goes into coaching. I'll be interested to see if Mike Norvell can come away with one. It's going to be a really fun game to preview. I'm looking forward to being down there that entire weekend. Thank God it's on a Sunday. Get to enjoy a little bit of the festivities down there. I'm sure probably James will be there too. But this sets up for, we love prime time. The logo still holds weight out there, which is nice to see.
Absolutely. And, during this rough patch, like you say, rarely has Florida State matched up against a quality opponent and been the more stable situation for obvious reasons. But in this game, even though LSU is a slight favorite, there are more known factors for Florida State. Starting at quarterback, the quarterbacks checked off. Jordan Travis is the guy, no challengers. He's the man. He's the leader, undisputed. He's the guy. Mike Norvell's third season. Yeah, sure, there's been some change at offensive coordinator, for example, and in some changes here and there as every program undergoes each and every season, but still there's stability within the coaching staff, the head coach, most of the core of the team on both sides of the ball, as opposed to LSU. And we're going to talk about it here in a few minutes, hopefully, when our guest arrives. They basically have a coin flip of a quarterback situation right now. They have no idea who the quarterback's going to be, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They've got a loaded quarterback room, but probably the most talented players, Walker Howard, he's a 5-star. He's not going to be the starting quarterback. He's a true freshman. They're kind of backloaded in the quarterback room. They've got Jaden Daniels, and they basically have Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier battling for the job, as well as Miles Brennan, who entered the transfer portal, backed out, and now he's staying to battle for the job. He was the quarterback that replaced Joe Burrow and started the first 3 games of 2020 through 12 touchdown passes, got hurt, and we haven't seen him since. He's missed a full season plus and is just now coming back here in 2022. So, yeah, a lot of question marks for both teams, big brand names. It looks like a primetime matchup when you just look at the brand names, but two programs that have seen better days and are looking to get back to where they expect to be.
Yeah, no, most certainly. And I think too, for Mike Norvell's situation, just being there for all of the spring and watching the practices and just kind of reading him and then reading the rest of the staff, they feel confident after this spring. And, they've made some changes. Really the only change staff wise, players wise, kind of, you've let some guys go and maybe trying to thin out and get ready for the 2023 class or whichever kind of game plan Mike Norvell's trying to put together. But, you lose Chris Marv, your linebackers coach, but then you're able to bring in Randy Shannon. You're practically bringing a lot of that same staff back this upcoming season. And so you're hoping with a true third year for Mike Norvell, things have got to start clicking. You can't hope they are. They have to start clicking. And like I had mentioned, the spring, I felt like there's definitely some things that they need to fix, a few things, but coming off of Mike Norvell and the few things that he was telling us is that he felt like a lot of the early enrollees that showed up and a lot of the transfers that showed up, which are going to play a big time impact this upcoming season, including Micah Pittman, Johnny Wilson. If Winston Wright Jr. is able to get, recovered after his car accident, Bless Harris too, offensive line. If those guys showed up like Mike Norvell said, and then they felt really acclimated and got into their groove pretty smoothly into the process there of understanding the playbook, understanding how Mike Norvell likes to run his practices, which is a very strict and nonstop 4 hours of almost feels like hell a little bit. I feel bad for him, but only one water break all throughout that. That's a good sign, I think. These guys really, a lot of these guys, veterans coming back into this system, should know kind of how Mike Norvell wants to do things and understanding the system. And the biggest thing for Florida State is going to have to be, how that offense is going to look. I think defensively, heading into this game, and if nothing changes drastically or whichever, Florida State is bringing in a really talented defensive line. And like you were just talking about, Mark, for a quarterback room that might not know who they want to start yet. Yes, they have talent there, but could experience the lack of experience, or put in a younger player at quarterback there, be a problem for LSU going into this game in a primetime matchup, which is most expected to be a very rowdy stadium. And Florida State now bringing in Jared Verse, who's absolutely blew up this spring, and very high on him, along with Florida State's interior defensive line, which I think coming out of camp was your strongest unit. And then you go on the other side and go to one of your most experienced defensive ends of the Florida State program, Derek McLendon. That's a defensive line that would love to come and wreak havoc to a quarterback that might still be acclimating to a system, and that being their true week one opponent being Florida State's defense, which I thought had the strongest side during the entire camp, and by a decent margin too.
All right. You know what we've got going tonight, Logan? This should be a shock. We've got some Miami trolling going on.
Oh, never, ever on here. Never, ever. Oh, and Timmy's commenting on here too. Yeah, Dennis Briggs. I was going to mention Dennis Briggs too, but I was trying to go for what my projected starting unit there is. I think is going to be Jared Verse and Derek McLendon, but you're able still to use Dennis Briggs in a lot of different ways. I think there could be times where a certain other guy might be starting a game, but those are probably your top three guys at defensive end heading into the season. And it just goes to show, specifically talking about this LSU game, you got to hope that everybody after week 0, after they face Duquesne, everybody's healthy and ready to go in New Orleans, because they're going to want to have a big time pass rush there and, affect that quarterback. And I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to jump in and preview a lot of that game, because it's going to be interesting how Mike Norvell and Florida State want to run their offense against LSU, but it might be even better to see how Adam Fuller's defense wants to take care of that quarterback room and running back room, but really causing havoc at the quarterback, because they were able to do it to quite a bit of talented. If you look at Tyler Van Dyke last year, Miami game, Jermaine Johnson did what he wanted to do against Miami's offensive line. So did Keir Thomas. That defensive line just wreaked havoc, and that was the big game where you had to get to the quarterback. And they did that multiple times throughout the season, but specifically against a guy that's highly regarded, looking forward, to having a bigger season too down there in Miami, for them to, dial in, and the biggest thing, get after the quarterback. And that's something Adam Fuller told us after the game, that was something that, that was scripted and put together to, really hurt the Miami offense. So we'll see if they're able to do it in New Orleans.
Florida State football talk here. This is what we do every Wednesday night here at the Voice of College Football, 6 Eastern. And this is, of course, on our FSU channel that we deliver content every day. Catch Logan and the boys on Thursday right here on YouTube on Knoll Game Day, 8:30 Eastern. So make that a point. Thursday night, 8:30 with Logan and the guys there at Knoll Game Day. And we got Danny on the line here, who's basically looking at some recruiting issues. Thinks most of the top Florida wide receivers are getting away in the 2023 class. Any thoughts there?
I'd look for any position at all right now. I mean, and we're in May, the 18th of May, and this is kind of where everything just starts slowing down. So now it's kind of like the freak out time. And I think we talked about this last week maybe, but it's going to be wins. I think there's not a lot of momentum right now on Florida State's side. You want to create momentum, make sure you take care of business, your first couple of weeks into the football season. I think a lot of things now, at least recruits, families, they're looking now. Norvell preaches a really good message. He does a really good job with families, talking with them. He creates great visiting atmospheres. 1, 2, 3 days, they have everything dialed in to where, these recruits really do leave Florida State and sometimes putting them in their top 3, if not naming them their top choice. But you go back onto the football field on Saturdays and you lose games that you're not supposed to. Hint, hint, Jacksonville State at home. That's not going to help you in any way of creating some kind of momentum to grab these wide receivers or any kind of recruits, let alone, So winning is going to have to be key for Florida State this upcoming season. It's very apparent, I think. And, I wish kind of recruits would just go ahead and say it because, in these interviews, you can read them pretty well on what they're meaning, and they just don't want to come off, straight up saying a few things and talk bad or anything about the university. But you could see in reading these interviews that it's going to have to come to wins. They want to see answers on the field. They want to see Florida State. You're able to take down Miami last season, but you're still competing, trying to beat Florida, which you should have done. You most certainly should have done. Dan Mullen's not there. They have an interim head coach. Florida State brings its entire staff. What are we doing here where you can't go down and dominate and, you lose Jordan Travis in the first quarter. But once again, you're still it's still a beatable team. And looking at, the other side of the ball and the quarterback they had there for the first part of that game, Florida State should have came away with the win. So there's a lot of things that go into this. I was going to mention too, LSU, FSU, this is big time recruiting ramifications for this game. And if you want to kind of start off your momentum there and as being a staff member and Mike Norvell alone, getting a win against LSU is where you can start creating that momentum for your upcoming class. But right now it's dead. There's not a lot going on. And so now I think it's just kind of freak out time, and that's understandable. You don't grab Mims. He goes back to Georgia. There's a few recruits that aren't putting you in your top 10 or top 5 anymore, but W's change things.
So Logan, on that same topic, is there anybody on the coaching staff that you have the most faith in based either on their track record as a recruiter at Florida State or before they got to Tallahassee, or just that you've got a good feel for them and what they've been able to do as a recruiter that you've got the most confidence in on this coaching staff?
Mike wasn't, he wasn't a big time recruiting coach like maybe Jimbo was. You weren't expecting a whole lot on the recruiting side from Mike Norvell, but he decided to put around a lot of useful people in the room. Florida State loses Kenyatta Watson. I think that's actually a win in Florida State's book. Just from things I was hearing and stuff, that was something that needed to happen. You still got Bartow, you still got Ryan Bartow inside of the program there. There was some rumblings earlier this week that, these are all off-field guys just starting off, but there was rumblings about Tim Brewster, something going on there. I personally wouldn't have been a big fan of that for maybe a reunion. I know a lot of people are going back to anybody that won a national championship at Florida State. They should go back onto the staff. No, sir. No, I don't think that would have been a great grab for Florida State due to a lot of reasons that we'll keep, private for, just to probably be smart there, but wouldn't have been a great idea for Florida State to bring back Brewster. Wish him the best of luck at whichever gig he goes to. He's been to a lot of them since his departure from Florida State. Just putting that out there. And then I'd probably say the biggest person right now, you love what Alex Atkins is doing. He's doing a great job of bringing in guys on the offensive line. What he did in this last class was really impressive. Because, you had to find some kind of not only bringing in a class, but bring in some depth there, some young freshmen that can come in and start building an offensive line room, because Florida State has had a room, but it hasn't been special whatsoever. So Atkins and what he does there, has been special. And as being your top priority recruiter, I think he's one of them. But he can't coach. He can't recruit all positions. Has he gone in and helped a few other positional coaches? Yes, he has. But that's just not going to cut it. You need more of that. I'd go over to David Johnson. I'd say probably, really the other guy has got to be Johnson. He does a really good job, at least from what I've heard from recruits telling me that have committed to Florida State. Just the kind of father figure he brings, and the moms too really like having their kids go there because of David Johnson. And, he's got a really good track record too of who he's put into the league. So there's still work to be done there. That's a bad thing though, that, just kind of naming off just a few on-field staff members. There's still work to be done there, in my opinion.
Two enormous brands struggling for the last couple seasons on Sunday night in prime time. Week 1, LSU, Florida State. We got our guy Carter from LSU Power Hour joining us to break it all down for us. Carter, what's going on, man?
What's up, Mark? I decided to rock some Florida State colors.
Look at that.
I wanted to blend in. I was wearing a purple hat, purple shirt, but I wanted to show some love to one of my favorite running backs of all time. That is none other than Baton Rouge native Warrick Dunn. Are there? I'm sure there's a few Warrick Dunn fans out there in the universe watching this right now, and it's crazy. Like, if you're in your mid-30s, you have a romantic relationship with Peter Warrick's highlight tape. You just do. Like, if I'm ever down and out, I'll go to 2 highlight tapes that gets me excited. It's his and it's Tyrann Mathieu. So there's a piece of me that likes Florida State just a little bit. But Sunday, baby, Sunday night, ABC on the Mickey Mouse Network. Let's go. I'm really excited. Let's do it.
Well, if you're talking early to mid 30s, I guess we don't do that on this show. We like either cut it high or low on the age scale, Carter. we got bookended on both ends, but no mid 30s here. So you're filling the gap for us.
That's right.
You are filling the gap. So we appreciate you being here. This should be a heck of a ball game, a big ball game for both teams. I was making the comment to Logan a few minutes ago that during this struggle that Florida State's had since 2017, it's been rare that they faced a big-time opponent that, in a sense, has more questions than they do. Not necessarily bad questions, just questions that need to be answered on the LSU side. And, of course, that starts with the quarterback position. You still have 3 in play, and that doesn't even include the 5-star true freshman.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? So you go into this game with Florida State having some clarity of what they're going to have at quarterback, and LSU, Mark, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. I don't think even the coaching staff knows who their quarterback is going to be right now, where, of course, it looks, I'll throw this to Logan in the chat. It looks as if Jordan Travis is 99.9% going to be the guy, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so it's the opposite, obviously, with LSU. And I honestly don't know what the coaches feel at this point, who their guy is going to be going into this next year. Because, going into the summer, Mark, and you and I discussed this before, and we've discussed this on my channel, it was just looking like it's going to be Jaden Daniels versus Miles Brennan, and then Garrett Nussmeier shows up and shows out in the spring game, and he's in year 2 of his development. So as of right now, I feel as if LSU doesn't know who their quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier too, because Florida State, I think probably the best thing that Florida State's gonna be able to bring on Sunday when it comes is it's probably Florida State's defensive line. And, we talked about how that's going to play an impact to whenever y'all got a quarterback going into the first week and understanding the whole system. That's going to be definitely a heavily favored LSU crowd, which I'm definitely looking forward to.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to be rowdy in there, but let alone that's still a big time prime time matchup with, a team, Mike Norvell, a coach that desperately needs a win like this, not just to save his job, but for recruiting too, and a lot of additional things that go with it. But the quarterback room for y'all, y'all are still thinking about that. Meanwhile, Florida State has a guy that they feel very confident in, that they'll, name the starter. He is the starter. Norvell said it this spring. Now, this is our starter, and we're going to put guys around him to be better. And this is really Jordan Travis's second year too. But for something to be on this stage, though, he hasn't really hit this kind of stage where you had a neutral side game. I call it neutral, but this is going to be heavily impacted by LSU fans. This is going to be a whole different stage for him. Can he make plays? Can he have the calmness where he can just sit back? Can he be in the pocket long? Is that going to get him where he gets antsy again, which is something that hurt him a while back? There's just so many different things, at least quarterback wise, going head to head, that we'll be watching, we'll be watching more of your camp more than anything, because Florida State has their guy, but watching y'all start to fall camp, really understanding who y'all intend on going with. Is there anybody, maybe that you saw or heard from the spring that had a good spring in the quarterback room that might, you might have a projection on who Brian Kelly might go with?
Honestly, Logan, really was obviously Jaden Daniels was the heavy favorite with 3 years of starters experience. He was also very durable, and he had a fine camp, but the other two quarterbacks are simply better throwers of the football. Now, what's really interesting, you mentioned Florida State's defensive line. LSU also has a really talented defensive line in and of themselves. What's really, to me, the key, and you guys mentioned Alex Atkins a minute ago, very good young offensive line coach. LSU has Brad Davis. I know they kicked the tires. I know Alex Atkins' name was rumored for a second for someone that LSU might pursue as well. I think those two guys are going to be very key in this matchup, because obviously with LSU's offensive line, they have a lot of new bodies. And for some reason, Florida State, dating back to the late Jameis Winston years, they've always had offensive line issues. I don't know exactly why that's been the case. I know, once again, I don't know as much about Florida State as neither one of you guys, but every time I watch them play, I'm like, God, this is just crazy. Florida produces so much offensive line talent, and they can't ever seem to get a good five that works well together. So those two guys are going to have a really difficult time going up against each other's defensive lines, no matter who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, you're completely right. Please don't remind me again about how awful Florida State's offensive line has been throughout the last, like you said, really been a decade where Florida State just cannot find an answer there. And we were talking about it earlier. Florida State definitely has the offensive line coach that they need, and they're starting to bring in that class, but it's not going to have any kind of effect on this game whatsoever. No impact will happen. But what is LSU really doing on the offensive line? Because that is something where Florida State, if I'm going into this game, getting after the quarterback is going to be key. Florida State was able to do it last year with Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas. Those two guys no longer on the field, but they are, watching spring, they're going to have two guys that are ready to go. One that being a veteran that has had really good flashes, but didn't get a lot of playing time because Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas. And then Jared Verse comes in, who was a really highly touted JUCO player that came in and is really, really talented and can get to the quarterback. What are your thoughts on the LSU offensive line? Is there some cause of concern there? Because you said they're still trying to figure out their starting O-line, or there's some guys that left and there might be some holes for Florida State to take advantage of?
Yeah, they have a lot of holes. For one, their best offensive lineman right now is a true freshman. Now, he was a top 50 true freshman in Will Campbell, but he was the most dominant offensive lineman in the spring, and he's probably going to be a freshman All-American. He's a real deal. And figuring out what the rest of that group is going to look like, one of them is actually a transfer from the Florida region, and Miles Frazier. He'll probably start one of the guard spots. And overall, that offensive line, trying to find the best five is going to be difficult. However, the real strength of LSU's team is their wide receiver room. And they probably have, the best wide receiver room in the SEC. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. And then, maybe only Ohio State has a better wide receiver room than what LSU has going into next year. Now, there's a lot of other weaknesses on this team, but by far their strength is going to be their wide receivers. So essentially, this is going to come down to how Florida State secondary is going to match up against Kayshon Boutte, who's probably wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 going into next year's NFL draft. They also have Jack Bech and Malik Neighbors, future first, second, and third round picks themselves. So that is where LSU's strength is, and it's also been their strength of the past decade. It's been by far their strongest position on offense year after year, and that's going to be the difficult thing. Can Florida State secondary match up against what LSU's guys out wide have to do?
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that real quick because Florida State's DB room, at least definitely set at the corner position. It was a big question mark, was one of my biggest question marks going into the spring on who are going to be your starters. And man, I mean, Florida State does have talent there, but it's young. It's very young and not a whole lot of experience. I mean, they've got college experience, but not as much as I would like, or any FSU fan would like, going into, like you said, facing a very strong opponent that has a stacked room in the wide receiver area. And, you know, you got to hope that Florida State on their side, these young guys can come up and play, because, you know, Marion Cooper, Kevin Knowles, you know, those guys have the abilities. We saw them. You know, we saw Marion Cooper have a really good game against Clemson, and that was nice to see on the road. But, you know, this is going to be a different state for him, where he's going to be an expected starter this upcoming season. You've got Renardo Green on the other side, who at the end of spring camp was starting to feel fully healthy again, and, you know, was thrown into there to be cornerback 2. There's a lot of young guys there, is what I'm trying to put out. And, you know, that's where it's going to be a battle. And I think we're starting to kind of figure that out now, that, you know, that offensive line for LSU versus Florida State's defensive line is going to be a key factor, because, you know, you can try to throw as much, but if Florida State's defensive line can get back there, if Florida State's defensive line can't get back there, then I start, you know, for an FSU fans, you're going to be a little worried about some problems there in the secondary. And,
well, let me ask you this question. How are you feeling about I know Mike Norvell. I see a lot of people in the chat saying Mike Norvell is trash, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm pretty familiar with Norvell. Tell me a little bit more about what Florida State has at coordinator. Does the Florida State fan base feel good about what they have at OC and DC going into this year?
Yeah.
Dad Carter, by the way, it's the Miami contingent showing up for the Florida State show.
Hey,
that is what you're reading right there.
We have Miami fans. This is practically Florida State / Miami show every week on Wednesdays. But no, yeah, going back to your question, you know, offense isn't going to change much. Florida State lost Kenny Dillingham. He was quarterbacks and OC. He was a little bit more hands-on than maybe just Norvell calling plays last year. Now it'll be Norvell and Coach Atkins, the offensive line coach that got promoted. Nothing's going to change really offense-wise. Nothing's going to change there. Not expecting Coach Atkins to jump in and start calling plays, yada, yada. And, you know, Atkins kind of talked about that in the beginning of the spring. Like, no, nothing's changing there much. You know, he'll definitely be hands-on, but he's been always hands-on. So nothing's going to change there. Defensively, you know, as long as we've always been talking about Florida State's offensive line and their woes there, but to go to defensive coordinator too, and Florida State has had that since that national championship of defensive coordinators that Florida State fans have not been that much of a fan of. I think Adam Fuller's I think he's a good coach. I think he is. He's had some very questionable situations, I'd say, that I think the fan base definitely gets riled up about. You know, they've been through it before where Florida State can't make a stop on third down. It could be 3rd and 12, 3rd and 25, 3rd and 32, where Florida State just for some reason can't make a play. And, you know, that's caused a lot of the fan base to get riled up. I will say, though, you know, being around the program and being at the practices this whole entire spring, this is going to have to be the side of the ball that carries, at least for the overall season, not even looking at this game. But I think this defense is going to be their strongest unit heading out there on Saturdays. And I think for what, you know, when we talked about some young defensive backs, very talented, you got a linebacker room you're building. Fuller has what he needs now on that defensive side of the ball. And now it's time to deliver. And it's time to deliver for a lot of members on this staff. There's a lot of members that have to deliver, but probably Fuller, one of the bigger guys that you feel now you've got your players, you're in your third-year system. Things got to click there where you're not allowing some of these teams to be scoring as many points as they are, or you're allowing I'm not going to bring it up again, but allowing some scary things to happen to you where it should
Yeah.
never, ever happen again.
Yeah, I think, the big key here is all the pressures on Norvell in this matchup. I know Brian Kelly's going into this game, it being the first year after what happened with Coach O, but Brian Kelly has essentially $100 million guaranteed over the next 10 years, right? And Brian Kelly, if there is a strength, and he's got weaknesses, if there is a strength, it's winning as a favorite. He's won his last 40 games as a betting favorite, and he's won 94% of his, I think, over the past 5 years, games as a favorite. So if there is one thing he's good at, it's when he has as good or better talent, he wins those games. Now, what's very interesting, guys, is LSU has made two of the more interesting coordinator hires in the country, bringing in Matt House from the NFL, who's not called plays since 2018. And then, of course, you bring one of the best offensive play callers of the past few years at Cincinnati, coming over, Mike Denbrock, who used to be with Brian Kelly. Now, those are huge shifts for them, as it would be anyone going into LSU. So that's why I asked about the coordinators, because, there's a lot of pressure under them, in particular Matt House, because Durante Jones at the end of last year was a very popular guy. Matt House comes in and he has a lot of pressure. This is going to be his first time between the headsets in quite some time. He was just a position coach at the NFL level. So we'll see what happens with Coach House.
Something for you, Carter. Going back to the quarterback situation, it's going to come down to, especially with the wide receiver core that you have there with LSU, who's going to keep his poise, who has control of the team, who's going to make the best decisions once he lets it fly. It's going to come down to that. But if all those guys prove fairly capable at that, just looking at skill sets between the three in play, if they all max out their skill sets, who do you think? And I know it's difficult to tell because we've only seen Jaden Daniels from afar, and Nussmeier we haven't seen under the bright lights, etc. Brennan, it's been a year and a half since we've seen him, all those things. But when you put it all together, if they all max out their skill sets, who do you think you want to be the guy?
Yeah, so I think the highest ceiling of the three of those guys would be Garrett Nussmeier, simply because he's got the best arm. He throws with the best confidence. He's also someone that has a pretty clean injury history. Jaden Daniels, he struggled when it to throwing. His mechanics did begin to fall apart. Some of it last year had to do with the turmoil that was going on at Arizona State, but his intermediate passing game really began to fall apart. However, Jaden Daniels is an elite runner of the ball. Now, is he like a Michael Vick, Cam Newton level? No, but if you were to rate it out of 10, he's probably a 8.5 or 9 out of 10 level runner. He can win a game just on his legs alone. And yes, he did have some interception issues last year. Once again, I think some of that had to do with the turmoil that was going on. He, before that, had a pretty good touchdown to interception ratio. So he's, for the most part, pretty good with the football in his hands. Now, Miles Brennan has been there the longest. He is the most familiar with LSU, but he is a statue in the pocket, and he does have a pretty gnarly injury history. It's a wide variety of injuries that has happened to him. So as of right now, if you were to ask me just to pick one guy who I think would be the starter today, I would probably pick Jaden Daniels, because you would not ask this guy to transfer in with that much more experience than the other two just for him to sit on the bench. So for right now, I would say Jaden Daniels, also because it is a newer offensive line and you are going up against a Florida State defensive line. And yeah, they lost Johnson, but they're still a good unit with a fairly new offensive line. You would probably start the most mobile of the three quarterbacks, and that, of course, is Jaden.
It's fun. I was going to say Jaden Daniels is 1-0 against Florida State. He knows how to beat Florida State. It might have been a little while ago, but beat them 20-14 the last time they faced.
That's right. That's been a minute.
Right. It's funny because we also were talking about him because transfers, quarterbacks. Florida State would like to have a backup for Jordan Travis, but I don't think Jaden Daniels was wanting to go anywhere to back up anybody. But that would be a fun game, because if you're going to throw out two dual threat quarterbacks that always creates excitement because both of those players can run and put on some moves.
Yeah, and one quick thing here that's going to be very interesting, and I heard you guys talking about this. It is the season opener, right? You saw what happened with the heartbreaker comeback versus Notre Dame, and then you had the transfer come in and almost save the day, and there was so much emotion, and then it spilled over the next week versus Jacksonville State. And then you saw this with LSU over the past couple of seasons. They also lost their season opener in very similar fashion in both of those games. It was also a shootout, and they just never really recovered. So I do think, that season opener, you guys were mentioning it a minute ago, college football is this very unique sport with no preseason. Every regular season game has so much immediacy, so much impact on what you're going to do the rest of the way. That to me is probably the biggest storyline, knowing what happened to these teams the past couple of seasons and season openers.
We touched on recruiting a little bit. Logan made a couple comments concerning the footprints of both schools. So these campuses are roughly how far away from each other? They're both along that panhandle, southern coast shoreline to a certain extent. So we don't have to Google it right now, but
Tallahassee to Baton Rouge is probably about, I would guess, 8.5, 9 hours.
Okay, it's a pretty healthy drive, but still, what are the recruiting? I would think if both of these programs are on top of their game, then the recruiting ramifications should be huge because we're talking about battling for top 10, top 50 players in the country. But they're not necessarily on their games. Maybe Brian Kelly's recruiting at that point early in the 23 class, but are there recruiting ramifications from this one?
Well, let me start with Florida State going into Louisiana. They had I don't even know what happened to this guy, Destin Hill. They got him a few years ago, and then last year they were in it for Kendrick Law, and getting into Louisiana is tough, right? Saban could do it; he's done it, year in and year out. A&M's done a good job, but LSU does a really good job keeping up the fence there. But really, LSU's done a decent job over the years in Florida, so it could be a big game in that sense. I don't know how Logan feels about it. I do think this is a bigger game for Florida State when it comes to recruiting, just because of and once again, I'm just going to set the fire here in your chat. I don't mean to do it for Florida State fans, just because, the crystal ball thing is rolling right now. I mean, look, Mario did a good job getting my favorite running back out of Louisiana last year in Trevante Citizen. But more so just, keeping the state of Florida intact. Norvell's got to catch up. I mean, especially considering Napier has done a really good job building a staff. Florida's just gotten that much more competitive for, a state that produces a lot of talent.
Yeah, no, we talked about it earlier, but definitely very important for Florida State on their side of things with recruiting. I don't think it's so much. Definitely, I mean, you definitely don't want to have Florida State come in on LSU side and come away with a win right there at home. It wouldn't be a great start for Brian Kelly and what he's trying to do on the road for recruiting. But, for Florida State, they're trying to find any kind of momentum, let alone, I mean, they basic thing for them, they've got to find wins. But if you're trying to get into that New Orleans area again, you're able to grab Destin Hill. We'll see, there's some optimism that Hill should be arriving hopefully this summer. Actually got some good word about him this week. So that's a really good sign to have him actually come in and get onto the campus of Florida State. But, Norvell was able to go in and grab him a big time playmaker, but kind of starts slowing down. Start slowing down whenever you don't get wins and you have 8 wins in 2 seasons. Not so pretty. And so Florida State simply, they've got to go in and compete, but there's going to be a lot of recruits. This is a Sunday. This is what I love. Florida State does, I have to give it to them. They do have a lot of games, including the UF game, where they're kind of on nights where not a lot of other games, sometimes not even any other games are going on in the country. So this allows for a lot of recruiting trips, a lot of players to come in and watch these games. And so you're going to have a lot of talent in the area along with inside the house there to watch these games. And so it'll be fun. It'll be a big recruiting weekend there for Florida State. And there's a lot of guys too out of Louisiana that they would love to grab offensive line wise. continued growth there for Florida State and trying to get into the Louisiana area, because there is a lot of talent there. And just like you said, it's hard to get in there. There's only a few coaches, very select few, that are able to do it. But it kind of stunk there for Florida State, because they were having some momentum, but that's all because of the new coach. You get the whole hoopla, yada 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 kind of stuff going on, and you have that momentum there. But now you're at a stale point, and the only way to get away from a stale point is coming away with a victory week 2 for FSU. And that, I don't know, it's going to be a big time recruiting weekend, at least for an FSU side.
And Mark, just to give you one spicy storyline before I get out of here, this is where it gets really interesting, right? So this game's being played in the Superdome. It's going to be a Sunday night, and the Saints, of course, playing the Dome. So you're going to have Jameis Winston going up against Jarvis Landry and Tyrann Mathieu. So I'm sure they're going to be guest captains there. I'm sure. I mean, as you guys know, those three are three of the biggest personalities in the NFL. So I know it's like a little side note that has nothing to do with the game, but it could be. We all James eat that W. You don't know if that pep talk could be the difference. That could be the pump. Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry are known for their pep talk, and their leadership. So that's another storyline. I know I'll be back on here to preview the game again, but it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I came in hot with the Peter Warrick stuff.
That was a great way to come in.
I wanted to be welcome, but I didn't know that half the chat would be Miami fans.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know the hurricane troll world.
They get around.
I mean, that's the thing about Miami Hurricane fans. They have nothing to do all day, so they got to troll. That's what they do, baby.
Carter, we needed you a couple years ago before LSU put the beat down on Miami to come on my Miami channel, because I got that show coming up here in about 5 minutes.
Oh God,
let's go. You know what's funny? I actually do think Mario's really good. I do like what he's done with the staff. It's just, I don't know. There's always this piece of me that thinks Miami is never going to come back. I hope they do. I think it would make college football spicier, whether it's Florida State or Miami, to be back into relevancy. We're badly missing the brands of like Texas and USC being relevant again. So I'm hoping either one of those two actually comes out. Now, I don't care. I know I'm on the Florida State channel.
You saved yourself there, Carter.
I really like look. There's more Miami players than I like Florida State players. But like I said, Warrick Dunn, Peter Warrick, that was my childhood. Those guys were so freaking insanely good at football. But yeah, it was good talking to you guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention there, well, I know that we're getting off here in a second, but I want to make sure that we're all, tailgating for this fascinating couple weeks opener there for Miami. Let's go ahead and list who they're opening the season with. Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. That one we'll have that recorded. Make sure you guys get some catering. Do reservations now. It's going to be a busy time there in Miami. And then September 10th, Southern Miss, the Golden Eagles will be facing Miami Hurricanes. So really exciting. It might not.
There is another one the week after that one.
Well, that one I don't want to bring up to them. I did that on purpose. I don't want to bring them up. Nightmares will start happening beginning tonight if I bring up what they're about to be facing with Jimbo and Texas A&M. I don't. That one. Get your boats. Luckily, you can go boating. There's a lot of spots there in Miami because you're about to get boat raced by Jimbo once again. He did it a lot to Miami. I don't think this will be much of a difference this year. So a really exciting start to the season there for the Hurricanes. A little bit different than maybe ours is down there in New Orleans with a really fun matchup. Two powerhouses. The logo hits different.
I love this. I'm looking at this chat now. They're like, Carter would get shredded on the Miami channel. I was like, oh, what do they have to brag about right now? How would I get shredded? Like, I mean, what really? Like, here's the thing that Miami fans can't handle. Okay, and it's just a fact, right? 2019 LSU would shred any of those Miami teams, any of them. I don't care Kellen Winslow, Warren Sapp,
Throw in
Sean
yeah.
Taylor. I don't care if they were all on the same team. I don't care if you put the greatest Miami players of all time all on the same team. Clinton Portis, Frank Gore, Ken Noodle Arm Dorsey. You could put them all on the same team, and they would still be 15.5-point dogs on a neutral field versus Joe Burrow, the greatest offense of all time. It makes no sense. Miami fans, just live with the fact that you are the second greatest college football team of all time. It's okay. And I understand Miami fans have to live in yesteryear. That's perfectly fine as well. That's great. We can, we can go to Club Live afterwards after we beat you by 30. It doesn't matter because we've already done it. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I had to get back to the Miami Trolls. So
I think it goes LSU 2019, FSU 2013. They're in that same little bracket. And then Miami's a little bit down. We'll talk about it later. We don't want to, we don't want to rile them up too much. We have the Miami Heat.
We can always have that DBU conversation too. We can always fire that.
That
one
would be a good one.
Well.
We'll have that one for our preview.
I guess I'll have to rep the team up north in Columbus, Ohio for that one. I guess I'll have to rep the Buckeyes for that one.
Sadly, though, not invited as Miami because there's basically nothing there. Anyways,
Carter, before you leave, let people know what you got going on over there.
Yeah, Power Hour LSU is where you can find me. I welcome Miami Trolls, Florida State fans. Look, the Miami Hurricanes are cool. Come on. Their teams in the 80s, 90s, 2000s are the coolest groups.
Don't try to grab those subscribers now. Don't do it. Don't be nice to them.
Here's the one thing I would say about Miami, okay? Miami and Miami only should be allowed to wear the rainbow visors. They should be allowed to wear it. No one else, because it matches your uniform. Sean Taylor with the rainbow visor is still the coolest looking defensive back I've ever seen in my life. So I will show some love to Miami fans. Their uniforms are absolutely dope. But yeah, Power Hour LSU is where you can find me. We have fun LSU content, deep breakdowns, and all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you soon, Mark and Logan. Get to talk to you, and
nice to meet you, Carter.
We'll see you closer till September. Let's go.
Appreciate it, man.
See you, bud.
Thanks, Carter.
See ya. All right, Logan. Anything you need to prep people on before we head on out?
No, not really. I got our show tomorrow night. We'll talk, of course, a little bit more of LSU and the primetime matchup being set up. Other than that, nothing too crazy, nothing too wild. We dropped a nugget on Destin Hill this morning too, or this afternoon, if you guys want to go check that out. I know that got brought up a little bit tonight, but if you guys are in the Discord, you guys already know about the latest from what I've heard regarding Destin Hill, the unicorn. So, yeah.
There it is. Join the Discord. They're talking Knowles all the time. Get on over there. All right, Logan, thanks for making it happen, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks, chat, too. Ronan, go buy yourself a beer, bud.